Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen and enjoy my stories every day. Today had been odd from the start. The morning air felt heavier as I watched Emily, my wife, with a restless energy I hadn't seen in her for years. She flipped through an old family album with a mix of nervousness and nostalgia, a smile touching her lips, a smile that hadn't been mine for a long time. "Anything interesting in there?" I asked, trying to peek over her shoulder. "Just old memories," she replied quickly, snapping the album shut. Her eyes darted around, as if she was guarding a precious secret. Throughout the day, she returned to that album. Each time, her fingers would linger on one particular photo, her eyes softening, then she'd glance around suspiciously as if expecting someone to catch her in the act. Dinner was a quiet affair. The clinking of cutlery filled the silence between us until Emily announced she needed to step out. "Just a quick errand," she said, but her tone was too casual, her smile too forced. Once the door clicked shut behind her, curiosity overpowered me. I retrieved the album from its hiding spot under the couch. Flipping through the pages, I found many familiar faces, but none that drew such a reaction as the one photo now missing, the one she'd held all day. Then, there it was, on the floor. The photo must have slipped out when she hastily stowed the album away. I picked it up, my heart thumping wildly. It was a picture of Emily, younger, more carefree, kissing a man I had never seen before. They were entwined under the old oak tree at Miller's Park, the one she called our place when we first met. On the back, scrawled in recent ink, the caption chilled me to the bone: "We'll meet again, I'll never forget you, I swear, it will happen today at our place." Our place. A cold realization washed over me. I knew then where I had to go, where this betrayal was unfolding. The park was only a short drive away. Grabbing my keys, I left the house, each step fueled by a mix of dread and anger. As I drove, the streets blurred past, each turn taking me closer to the impending confrontation. The familiar path to the park was eerily quiet under the dim streetlights. I parked and walked the familiar trail to the old oak tree, my heart pounding in my chest. There, in the shadows cast by the moonlight, I saw them, Emily and the stranger from the photo, just as they had been years ago, only older, their laughter piercing the silent night. The sight shattered any remnants of denial. I was nothing but a pawn in her game, a stand-in until she could return to her first love. The betrayal cut deeper than the cold night air. I stepped out from the shadows, anger seething through my veins. "Emily." My voice was a mix of pain and fury. She turned, her expression morphing from shock to fear. "John, don't. Just don't." I cut her off, my hands clenched at my sides. "How long?" The man stood up, stepping toward me with an apologetic look. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way." "Save it," I spat out. The plan for revenge began to take shape in my mind, as cold and dark as the night around us. This was the moment of truth, the prelude to a reckoning that would change everything. I had come here broken-hearted, but I would leave with a resolve forged in betrayal. Emily's deception would not go unpunished. Tonight was just the beginning. The confrontation under the moonlit oak was electric with tension. Emily stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock. Beside her, the stranger, her long-lost love, had a hand extended in a futile attempt to calm the brewing storm. "John, please, let me explain," Emily pleaded, her voice trembling. "I gave you a life, Emily. What was all this?" I gestured angrily between her and the man. "It's not what you think," she began, but I cut her off. "I think it's exactly what it looks like." My shout echoed through the empty park, my anger a palpable force. The man stepped forward, his expression one of regret. "I'm Michael," he introduced himself, though it was the last thing I cared about. "Emily and I were close, years ago. I just came back to town, and we needed closure." "Closure?" I scoffed, disbelief coloring my tone. This is how you get closure. Before more words could be exchanged, the sound of footsteps approached from the path. Turning, we saw a woman, around Emily's age, her expression concerned. "Is everything all right here?" she asked, looking between us. "This doesn't concern you, Lisa," Emily said quickly, recognizing the newcomer. Lisa stopped, her concern shifting to confusion. "Emily," I heard shouting. I thought someone might be in trouble. The tension shifted slightly, and I saw an opportunity. "You know about this?" I asked Lisa, my gaze piercing. She hesitated, glancing at Emily before nodding slowly. "I knew Michael was back in town." Emily mentioned she needed to sort out some things from the past. Sorting things from the past, that phrase hung in the air, heavy with implications. Emily's betrayal was not just emotional but premeditated, wound deeper than I had anticipated. "See, John, it's not. Save it, Emily. I've heard enough for one night." My voice was cold, cutting through the night air. I turned to leave, the weight of betrayal anchoring each step. "John, wait." Emily called after me, desperation in her tone. I paused but did not turn. "What now, Emily? There's more to this. It's not just about us. It's bigger." "Bigger?" The word echoed in my mind. Reluctantly, I faced her again. "What do you mean?" She exchanged a glance with Michael, who nodded slightly. Emily took a deep breath. "It's not just about our past. It involves some old debts and promises that needed to be resolved. Not just between us, but bigger things involving our families." Family debts. The plot thickened, and my resolve to uncover the full extent of her deception hardened. "I'm listening," I said, though my patience was threadbare. "We can explain everything, but not here, not now," Michael interjected. "Meet us tomorrow, at the cafe downtown. We'll explain everything." I considered this, the detective in me curious despite the heartache. "Fine. Tomorrow," I agreed tersely. As I walked away, the pieces of the puzzle rattled in my mind. Family debts, old promises, and secrets buried in the past. What had Emily entangled us in? And how deep did these secrets go? Tomorrow, I vowed, the truth would come to light. The cafe downtown buzzed with the usual morning crowd, the air thick with the aroma of coffee and the hum of quiet conversations. I arrived early, scanning the room until I spotted Emily and Michael seated at a corner table. Their faces were tense, eyes frequently darting to the door until they settled on me. As I approached, Michael stood, his gesture of politeness not quite masking his anxiety. "John, thanks for coming." I nodded, sitting down with a controlled calmness I didn't feel. "Let's cut to the chase. What's this all about?" Emily clasped her hands on the table, her voice low. "When we were younger, Michael and I, we got involved in something. It wasn't just a fling. It involved our families, some debts that were never settled." Michael took over, leaning forward. "Our families were involved in a business together, one that didn't exactly play by the rules. When I left town, I took with me a lot of secrets and a lot of debts people thought I'd forgotten." "And now you're back to settle those debts?" I asked, skepticism lacing my tone. "It's not just that," Emily interjected. "When Michael left, things settled down, but there were promises made. Promises that if ever called upon, we had to answer." "And they called on you?" I pressed. Michael nodded. 2 days ago, I received a message. They want to settle everything once and for all. It's not just about money, John. It's about ensuring our families aren't dragged into something darker than they already were." I leaned back, absorbing the gravity of their words. The cafe's ambient noise seemed to fade into the background as I focused on the couple before me. "So, where do I fit into this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Emily reached out, her touch hesitant. I needed to see Michael, to figure out how we could protect you from all this. You weren't ever supposed to be involved. But I am involved, Emily. Because you involved me, I countered sharply. At that moment, a man in a dark coat entered the cafe, his gaze sweeping the room until it landed on our table. Michael stiffened, his eyes narrowing slightly. That's him, isn't it? I asked, already knowing the answer. Yes, Michael confirmed. That's Donovan. He's the one we owe. Donovan approached our table, his smile more a baring of teeth than a gesture of friendliness. Michael, Emily, and you must be the husband. John, isn't it? What do you want, Donovan? Michael's tone was defiant, but his worry was palpable. Donovan chuckled, pulling up a chair uninvited. What I always want. To collect. But seeing as how we're all civilized people, I think we can come to an arrangement. And if we can't? I asked, my voice ice cold. Let's just say I strongly advise that we do. Donovan's threat hung in the air like a storm cloud, ready to burst. Let's step outside, I suggested, standing up. I think we'll have more privacy for this conversation. As we moved outside into the brisk morning air, I was aware of every exit, every passerby. The stakes were clear, and the game was dangerous. But I was ready. If it was a storm Donovan wanted, I was prepared to bring the thunder. Outside, the brisk air felt charged as Donovan led us to a secluded spot behind the cafe. The distant murmur of the city was a stark contrast to the tension that wrapped around us like a thick fog. So, what's this arrangement you're talking about? I asked, crossing my arms. Donovan smirked, his eyes scanning the area before settling back on us. Simple. I wiped the slate clean. No more debts, no more hiding. But I need something in return. And what's that? Michael's voice was wary, his body tense as if preparing for a physical blow. A ledger, Donovan replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. It contains records of all transactions my family has been involved in for the past 20 years. Emily here knows where it is. Emily's eyes widened, a flash of fear passing through them before she regained her composure. That's buried deep. Getting it will dig up more than just records. That's my concern, not yours, Donovan snapped back. You get me that ledger, and you all walk away free. Why do you trust us with this? Why not get it yourself? I asked, suspicion threading through my words. Because, John, Donovan said, stepping closer, you have something to lose, which makes you motivated. And motivated people are effective. I glanced at Emily and Michael, seeing the resignation in their eyes. They were trapped, and this might be the only way out. All right, I finally said, we'll get you your ledger. Donovan's grin was predatory. You have 48 hours. As he walked away, the weight of our task settled over us like a heavy cloak. We returned to the cafe, planning our next move. Emily knew the ledger was hidden in her family's old estate, now a dilapidated structure forgotten by time. The drive to the estate was tense. As we walked through the creaking doors, the dust and decay of the place mirrored our own fraught spirits. Emily led us to an old study, where she moved aside a loose panel to reveal a hidden safe. Here, she said, handing me the combination she had memorized long ago. The safe opened with a heavy click, and there it was, the ledger, thick and bound in leather, ominous in its implications. But as I pulled it out, a series of photographs fell from between its pages, scattering on the floor. We picked them up, and what we saw made us gasp. The photos were of Donovan, involved in various illegal activities, some with prominent figures, all documented meticulously. This changes everything, Michael whispered, realization dawning on his face. We have leverage now, I said, a plan forming in my mind. Let's turn the tables. We met Donovan at the same secluded spot, the ledger and photos in a bag. Here's your ledger, I said, holding it out to him. As he reached for it, I pulled out the photos. And here's something else we found. How about we call it even? You leave us alone, and these photos stay out of the wrong hands. Donovan's face went pale, his usual confidence slipping. You wouldn't dare, he hissed. Try us, Emily said, stepping forward. Her fear had transformed into defiance. After a tense moment, Donovan snatched the bag, his eyes burning with anger and defeat. You'll regret this, he muttered, before turning and disappearing into the darkness. As we watched him leave, the weight of the world seemed to lift off our shoulders. Emily looked at me, a tearful smile breaking through. Thank you, John. For everything. I nodded, wrapping my arm around her. Let's go home. As we walked back to the car, the first light of dawn began to crest the horizon, symbolizing a new beginning. Perhaps, after all this, there could be a fresh start, not just for me and Emily, but for Michael too. But as we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. In our world, debts were never truly settled, and shadows never fully disappeared.